I tell you this, procrastination is not a problem with your willpower or your discipline. It is an invisible state you unconsciously inhabit, and I can show you how to shed it in an instant. If you're the man who wakes up with a surge of energy only to find yourself, by mid-morning, staring blankly at the unstarted project, the cursor blinking mockingly on an empty screen, feeling that heavy, familiar weight in your chest, knowing exactly what you should do but feeling utterly paralyzed to begin, while the untouched coffee grows cold beside your keyboard. That self-condemnation at 3 a.m., that gut-wrenching knowledge you are capable of so much more, yet you watch your ambitions wither day by day. By the end of this session, you will understand the singular, hidden assumption that compels you to postpone your desires, and I will reveal the 10-minute nightly technique that allowed me to publish all my most profound works, despite overwhelming inner resistance, a technique 41 of my students have used to break through years of inaction and complete long-delayed projects within 7 days. But most will walk away believing procrastination is a permanent flaw, forever trapped in the cycle of self-sabotage, never knowing the precise shift in consciousness that eradicates it instantly. In the next 8 minutes, I will expose the critical procrastination assumption you unknowingly hold, reveal the 3 fatal mistakes even devoted students make, and give you the technique to transcend it. Leave now and you condemn yourself to another year of unfulfilled potential. 1 o'clock, hear me now. The world tells you procrastination is a character flaw or a lack of discipline you must fight against with brute willpower. They are absolutely, profoundly wrong. I tell you it is not a fight, but a fundamental misunderstanding of your own creative power. You are not flawed, you are simply unaware of the state you are inhabiting. Story proof stack. I recall a time in my early days, before Abdullah taught me the fundamental truths, when I wrestled with a profound desire to communicate these concepts, but found myself perpetually delaying the writing of my first book. I had the vision, the knowledge, the absolute conviction in my message, yet the page remained blank. Hour after hour, day after day, I would stare at the typewriter, a tremor of dread running through me. The obstacle was a deep-seated belief that I was not yet ready, not wise enough, to put these sacred teachings into print. It felt like a mountain of resistance. 2 o'clock, this period revealed to me why procrastination is never about time management, but a profound misunderstanding of your own creative power. I thought I needed more research, more time, more proof, but what I truly needed was a shift in my assumption of who I was. I finally assumed the feeling of being the author whose book was already finished and accepted, who had already impacted countless lives. I did not try to write, I simply was the one who had written. The result was a sudden, undeniable urge to sit down and type, not out of struggle, but out of an inner knowing. The words flowed effortlessly, becoming the very first draft of Your Faith is Your Fortune. Subconscious programming. Your subconscious mind, being entirely impersonal, accepts any feeling you impress upon it as a command. If you constantly feel the resistance to a task, the dread of starting, the overwhelm of its completion, your subconscious will unfailingly bring forth experiences and circumstances that validate that feeling. It creates a reality where the resistance is real, the dread is justified, and the task remains undone. It is an obedient servant, not a discerning judge. It takes your dominant feeling, your assumed state, as its blueprint for reality. Contrast trap. Most men believe they must motivate themselves to overcome a perceived flaw, constantly battling their internal resistance with external pressure or self-condemnation, only to find themselves exhausted and defeated, forever trapped in the cycle of starting and stopping. They force, they push, they resent. But the man who understands that procrastination is a state of consciousness deliberately assumes the feeling of the accomplished task, recognizing that his mental state always precedes and dictates his physical action. He does not fight, he simply changes his internal address. 3:30 Affirm aloud now, with absolute conviction, I command my subconscious to manifest the feeling of accomplishment within me. Repeat this daily, especially before beginning a task. 3:50 Let me ask you, how often have you told yourself, I'll feel good after I finish this, only to find that this never starts? What if I told you that is the fundamental error? the exact, unseen assumption about your capability that actively compels you to postpone your desires. Story-proof stack. My dear teacher, Abdullah, once challenged me to demonstrate this very principle. I had a particularly arduous writing assignment for him, one that felt overwhelming in its scope. I confessed my resistance, my fear of the blank page, my inclination to delay. He looked at me, not with judgment, but with absolute certainty, and said, "Neville, the work is already done. Go feel it done." I was perplexed. How could it be done? I hadn't even started, but I trusted him. I went into my inner world, closed my eyes, and for a full hour I felt the relief, the satisfaction, the profound joy of having completed the assignment. I imagined holding the finished manuscript, feeling its weight in my hands, seeing Abdullah's approving nod. I inhabited that finished state. The next morning, I awoke with an inexplicable urge, a compulsion that felt like gravity, to sit down and write. The words simply flowed, and in 2 days, the entire assignment was completed, effortlessly, perfectly. The action followed the feeling, never preceding it. Subconscious programming. Your subconscious mind operates on the principle of cause and effect, but the cause is always within. You have been conditioned to believe that action is the cause of accomplishment, and the feeling of accomplishment is the effect. This is backwards. The feeling of accomplishment is the cause in the unseen realm, which then manifests as the inspired, effortless action in the visible world. When you feel the task completed, your subconscious immediately begins to align your thoughts, emotions, and external circumstances to bring that feeling into tangible form. It literally pulls you toward the completion. Contrast trap. Most men believe they must force themselves to start tasks through external motivation or strict schedules, believing that action must precede the feeling of accomplishment, that you have to earn the good feeling through sheer work. They are perpetually chasing a feeling that can only be found by assuming it first. But the man who understands the law consciously cultivates the feeling of the finished task before he lifts a finger. He basks in the glow of completion, and the necessary actions become not a burden, but an inspired, unavoidable expression of his inner reality. 6:30. Say this with me, and feel the truth in your bones. I am the man who completes his tasks with grace and power, for I always begin from the feeling of accomplishment. 6:50. Listen to me. If you see yourself as a procrastinator, a man who lacks discipline, or someone who can't stick to things, then I tell you, you are holding the exact assumption that guarantees your continued inaction. This is the unseen assumption about your capability that actively compels you to postpone your desires. Story-proof stack. Consider the profound teachings of Thomas Troward, a master of mental science. He spoke often of the causal order and the importance of identifying with the desired result. I remember struggling with the completion of a particularly complex lecture series. My self-concept at the time was still tinged with the belief that I was merely an interpreter of the law, not a master of it. This underlying identity of struggling student rather than authoritative teacher was, unconsciously, creating the resistance to finish. I then remembered Troward's insistence that the whole creation is the manifestation of the thought power of the individual. I realized my thought power was currently affirming struggle. 8 o'clock, I had to redefine who I was, not in terms of what I did, but in terms of what I am. I went into the silence and began to conceive of myself as the embodiment of inspired clarity, the teacher whose words flowed with effortless wisdom. I assumed the feeling of being the fulfilled lecturer who had already delivered the profound wisdom, seeing the faces of my audience alight with understanding. That shift in self-concept changed everything. The work became an extension of this new identity, not a chore. The lectures flowed, clear and concise, because I had changed the identity of the one creating them. Subconscious programming. Your self-concept is the sum total of all your assumptions about yourself. It is the filter through which you perceive reality, and more importantly, through which reality responds to you. If you consistently identify as someone who struggles to start, your subconscious will arrange your world to reflect that struggle. It will present opportunities for delay, generate feelings of overwhelm, and reinforce the belief that you are indeed a procrastinator. It cannot contradict your deepest conviction about yourself. You must understand that your concept of self is the ultimate programmer of your capacity for action. Contrast trap. Most men unconsciously operate from a self-concept that is riddled with past failures and limiting beliefs about their capacity for sustained effort. They try to do more without first being more. They believe I must fight my nature, perpetually battling an imagined flaw. But the man who masters this law understands that his self-concept is the blueprint for his entire life. He consciously, deliberately, and consistently revises his internal image of himself, seeing himself as an individual of unwavering discipline, boundless energy, and effortless accomplishment. He aligns his being with his doing, and the results are inevitable. 9:40 In the next 3 minutes, I will reveal the profound technique of imaginal completion, which is far more powerful than forced will, and then share the true secret to making action inevitable. 10 o'clock They tell you that willpower is the key, that you must grit your teeth and push through, that you must force yourself to start tasks. This is a brutal, exhausting, and ultimately ineffective path. It drains your vital energy and reinforces the very resistance you seek to overcome. You do not need more willpower. You need a more profound understanding of the power of your imagination. Story proof stack. My own experience with publishing my works taught me this invaluable lesson time and again. There were moments when the sheer magnitude of a manuscript felt crushing. The intellectual work, the editing, the revision, it all seemed too much. My natural inclination was to delay, to find distractions, but I remembered the words of Emmett Fox, who preached the absolute supremacy of spiritual ideas over physical manifestation. He taught that mind is the only creative power. Instead of forcing myself to sit at the desk, I would retreat. I would find a quiet place, close my eyes, and begin to imagine the finished book. I would hold it in my hands, feel its texture, smell the ink on the pages. I would see the cover, read the title, and then, most importantly, I would feel the immense satisfaction of a job well done. I would hear the commendations of readers, feel the intellectual triumph. This imaginal act was not a mere daydream. It was a living, breathing reality within me. It was the precise technique for feeling the task complete before lifting a finger, making the action inevitable. 11:30 This is my specific technique for feeling the task complete before lifting a finger, making the action inevitable. This inner reality became so compelling, so absolutely real, that the desire to physically manifest it became irresistible. The action flowed as a natural consequence, never as a forced obligation. This is how I accomplished all my works. Subconscious programming. Your subconscious mind makes no distinction between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one. When you engage in an imaginal act of completion, truly feeling the satisfaction, the relief, the joy of the task being finished, you are literally programming your subconscious with the experience of completion. It registers this as a past event, a fact. And because the subconscious always seeks to externalize what it has accepted as truth, it will then compel you, through inspiration, opportunity, and an undeniable inner push, to perform the physical actions that bring that already finished imaginal state into your outer world. The physical becomes an echo of the imaginal. Contrast trap. Most men believe that discipline comes from relentless pushing and pulling, from battling the inertia of the body and mind. They waste precious energy in internal conflict, treating their true self as an adversary. They believe they must force themselves to begin through willpower. But the man who understands the infinite power of his imagination knows that true discipline is not a struggle against, but an alignment with. He harnesses the power of the imaginal act, creating the feeling of completion within, and then allows that powerful feeling to draw him effortlessly into the necessary physical actions. He understands that the invisible is always the cause of the visible. 13:00 Affirm this with me, with deep knowing. My consistent imaginal acts of completion create effortless and inspired action in my physical world. Say this before every creative session. 13:20 What if every moment of procrastination from your past could be utterly dissolved, rewritten, and replaced with a memory of successful action, thereby eradicating its power over your present and future. What if those painful 3 a.m. self-condemnations for wasted days could be transformed into memories of inspired progress? Story proof stack. One of my most profound discoveries, and one I taught extensively, was the law of revision. I had a student, a dedicated man, but one plagued by a history of unfinished projects and broken promises to himself. He would start with great enthusiasm, only to abandon his work, often at a crucial stage. His past was a heavy chain, constantly reminding him of his failure to follow through. He believed this was an intrinsic part of his character. I taught him that the past, in the realm of consciousness, is not fixed. It is as malleable as the future. I instructed him to go into his imagination each night, specifically focusing on a past instance where he had procrastinated on an important task. Instead of reliving the frustration, I told him to revise that memory. He was to replay the scene, but this time, he was to see himself, in vivid detail, sitting down and completing the task with focus and joy. He was to feel the satisfaction of having done it, of having followed through. He was to feel the relief, the pride. He was to do this for several minutes, until the revised scene felt more real than the original. 1500. Listen closely. He continued this practice for a week, revising different instances of past procrastination. The result was nothing short of miraculous. The heavy weight of his past began to lift. He started a new project, one he had previously delayed for months, and not only did he begin, but he completed it in record time, with an ease and consistency he had never known. The revision had literally rewritten his capacity for action. He was no longer a man who procrastinates, he was a man who acted. Subconscious programming. The subconscious mind is a record keeper, but it is also a living, dynamic canvas. Every memory you hold, every past event, exists within you as a vibrational state. When you revise a past memory, you are not simply reimagining. You are literally changing the energy blueprint of that event within your consciousness. You are impressing upon your subconscious a new past, one that aligns with your desired self-concept. Because your future is always an unfolding of your past, what you carry forward from it, revising the past directly changes your future capacity and inclination to act. You are literally wiping the slate clean of limiting patterns. Contrast trap. Most men are prisoners of their past, allowing old failures and missed opportunities to define their present potential. They carry the burden of "I always do this" or "I'm just not capable," perpetually reinforcing their limitations. They believe the past is immutable, a fixed record, but the man who understands revision knows that the past is but a mental impression, and he possesses the absolute power to transform it. He consciously rewrites the narrative of his past, imbuing it with success, discipline, and completion, thereby liberating his present and future actions from the chains of old habits. 1650. You tell yourself, "This is going to be hard. I don't have enough time. I'm not smart enough for this." These are not harmless thoughts. These are powerful commands you are giving to your subconscious, actively compelling it to make the task difficult, to ensure you run out of time, to confirm your perceived inadequacy. This is not about external circumstances, it's about your internal programming. Story-proof stack. My good friend and fellow seeker, Joseph Murphy, always emphasized the power of the word. He said, "The law of life is the law of belief." I once observed a student of mine preparing for a major presentation. His internal monologue was a torrent of fear and self-doubt. "This is too much. I'll never remember it all. I'm going to fail." Predictably, he struggled immensely, procrastinating until the last minute, and delivered a mediocre presentation. I sat with him afterwards and explained that his inner conversation was not merely reflecting his reality, it was creating it. I instructed him, for his next presentation, to intentionally change his inner dialogue. Every time a negative thought arose, he was to immediately replace it with, "This presentation is flowing effortlessly. I am perfectly prepared. My words are powerful and clear." He was to feel the truth of these statements. The result was astounding. He prepared with an almost joyful focus, and his next presentation was delivered with confidence and eloquence, astounding himself and his colleagues. 1830. This is directly connected to the unseen assumption about your capability that actively compels you to postpone your desires. If your inner conversation assumes incapability or difficulty, that is precisely what you will experience. Subconscious programming. Your subconscious mind acts upon the dominant inner conversations you entertain. These conversations are living affirmations, constantly telling your subconscious what to create. If your inner voice is filled with resistance, doubt, and declarations of difficulty regarding a task, your subconscious registers this as your desired reality. It then orchestrates your experience to match that inner conversation, creating obstacles, generating feelings of overwhelm, and ensuring the task becomes precisely as difficult as you declared it would be. Conversely, an inner conversation of ease and accomplishment removes all friction. Contrast trap. Most men allow their inner conversations to run wild, a chaotic chorus of fear, doubt, and self-criticism, constantly sabotaging their own efforts before they even begin. They believe these thoughts are uncontrollable or merely how they feel. But the man who understands the power of inner conversation disciplines his mind to speak only words that affirm his desired outcome and capacity. He constantly cultivates a harmonious inner dialogue of ease, confidence, and accomplishment, knowing that his inner world will invariably shape his outer reality. He is the master of his inner voice, and therefore the master of his actions. 20:00 In the next 2 minutes, I will reveal the true power of your sleep state, and then, immediately after, I will give you the complete 10-minute nightly technique that allowed me to publish all my most profound works, regardless of inner resistance. Story-proof stack. Florence Scovel Shinn, a wonderful teacher of the law, often spoke of the importance of going to sleep with the conviction that your good is on its way. I applied this principle to my own creative endeavors. There were times when preparing a new series of lectures that I felt a genuine mental fatigue, a sense of creative drought. The words would not come. The concepts felt elusive. I knew forced effort would yield nothing but frustration. Instead, I adopted a strict nightly ritual. Before sleep, I would review my day not for its failings, but for what I desired to create the next day. I would enter the feeling of the completed lecture, the perfectly articulated concepts, the inspired flow of words. I would specifically imagine myself waking up the next morning, filled with an irresistible urge to sit down and write, feeling the joy of creation, not the burden. I would see myself effortlessly typing, the ideas pouring forth. I would fall asleep in that feeling. 21:40 Listen to me carefully now. Almost without fail, I would awaken not with dread, but with a surge of creative energy, a clear vision, and often, the very words I needed would be forming in my mind. The resistance that was present the night before would be utterly dissolved. Sleep, entered consciously, became my greatest ally for inspired action. This is the 10-minute nightly technique that allowed me to publish all my most profound works. Subconscious programming. The state of consciousness just before and during sleep is profoundly receptive. As you drift into sleep, your conscious mind begins to recede, and your subconscious mind becomes dominant and highly impressionable. It is during this period that you have direct access to program your inner world without the interference of waking doubts and fears. When you fall asleep in the feeling of a completed task, or with the clear intention of effortless action, your subconscious immediately begins to work on externalizing that state. It reorganizes your inner resources, dissolves internal blocks, and prepares your mind and body to align with that desired outcome upon awakening. It is a creative vacuum, ready to receive your command. Contrast trap. Most men fall asleep replaying their failures, condemning themselves for wasted time, or allowing their minds to dwell on the unstarted tasks with dread. They perpetuate the cycle of inaction by consciously programming their subconscious with more of what they don't want. But the man who understands conscious sleep prepares his mind as he prepares his bed. He intentionally enters the sleep state, assuming the feeling of accomplishment, of effortless flow, of complete success. He knows that his last waking thought is the first command for his next day, and he uses this divine principle to ensure he awakens inspired, compelled, and ready to act. 23:30 Now, you understand the invisible state. You understand that procrastination is not a flaw, but an assumed state of consciousness. You realize action must flow from accomplishment, not precede it. You know your self-concept dictates your capacity. You have seen the power of the imaginal act and the miraculous effect of revision, and you know how to command your nights. Here's exactly how you will put this into practice, beginning tonight, to achieve consistent, inspired action on your most important tasks within 7 days, leading to the completion of a long-avoided project within 30 days, or precisely identify the hidden assumption blocking your capacity to act. 1. The 10-minute nightly immersion technique. Each night, before you close your eyes, dedicate 10 minutes to this sacred ritual. Step 1. Identify your single most important task. Choose one task that you have been procrastinating on, one that, if completed, would bring you immense relief and progress. Step 2. Enter the feeling of completion. Close your eyes. Begin to imagine that task as already finished. See the completed document, feel the email sent, experience the project signed off. Engage all your senses. Feel the absolute, undeniable relief, the pride, the joy, the lightness that comes with its completion. Do not merely think about it, feel it. Step 3. Revise any resistance. If any feeling of past procrastination or current resistance surfaces, instantly revise it. In your mind's eye, replay that moment of hesitation, but this time, see yourself effortlessly beginning and completing the task. Feel the satisfaction of having overcome it. Step 4. Affirm your new identity. As you drift towards sleep, silently repeat to yourself, I am the man who completes what he starts. Action flows through me effortlessly. I am accomplished. I am disciplined. Step 5. Awaken with expectation. Before you fully open your eyes in the morning, remember the feeling you fell asleep with. Expect the urge to act. Expect the inspiration to flow. 2. Daily in a conversation discipline. Throughout your day, become fiercely aware of your inner conversations regarding your tasks. When you catch yourself declaring difficulty or delay, immediately revise it to a declaration of ease and flow. This is flowing easily. I have ample time. I am capable and focused. 25:30 If you apply this method diligently, I promise you, you will experience consistent, inspired action on your most important tasks within 7 days. You will be compelled to start, and you will find the resistance melting away. And within 30 days, you will either complete a long-avoided project or, with absolute clarity, identify the singular hidden assumption that was blocking your capacity to act. 26:00 You now know that procrastination is not a character flaw or a lack of discipline to be fought with willpower. It is a state you assume. You no longer need to force yourself to start tasks through external motivation or strict schedules. You can allow inspired action to flow from an inner feeling of accomplishment, and you understand that action does not precede the feeling of accomplishment. The feeling always precedes the action, making it inevitable. 26:30 We have unveiled why procrastination is never about time management, but a profound misunderstanding of your own creative power. It is about the state you assume. We have exposed the exact unseen assumption about your capability that actively compels you to postpone your desires, your self-concept, and your inner conversations. And I have revealed my specific technique for feeling the task complete before lifting a finger, making the action inevitable, the nightly imaginal immersion. 27:00 Now, the choice is yours. Will you remain trapped in the old paradigm of self-condemnation and endless delay, forever watching your ambitions gather dust, believing procrastination is a permanent flaw? Or will you embrace this profound truth, apply these principles with unwavering faith, and step into the identity of the man who effortlessly brings his greatest visions into glorious manifestation? 27:30 This truth, once understood, can never be unseen. Return to this message daily. Play this again and again until these principles become etched into the very fabric of your being. For I tell you, your life will never be the same. The invisible state that compelled your procrastination is now dissolved by the light of your conscious intention. Go forth and create.